Hey everybody, I am back and welcome to another Tuesday edition of Mythic Monday, where we take a look at Mythic Plus through the eyes of healers. In this episode, as always, we're going to be taking a look at the forming healer meta, the upcoming dungeon difficulty tier list, and the random thought of the week. Well, not so random. What's going on with this terrible Afflicted affix? Let's get into it. In fact, let's start with that, because it's a little too big of a point to ignore. Guys, I'm usually a pretty positive WoW player, which is somewhat of a rarity as it is, but I can't even pretend on this one. This affix is quite possibly the worst Blizzard has ever designed, and that's really saying something. I've given Blizz tons of credit for listening to the community and making a lot of really good calls during Dragonflight, but we have to call a spade here. If you've been having fun playing Diablo 4 instead of gouging your eyes out in keys this week, allow me to explain. Afflicted spawns 1 to 2 ads, super original by the way, that either need to be dispelled or healed to full, or they get off a cast that's essentially a reverse bloodlust, and this is the fucking face I make when I see them. There's a number of issues with this affix, but let's start with the big one. Only a select few specs can actually interact with it, and the bulk of the responsibilities will, you guessed it, land on the healer. All healers are able to dispel the affix, and dispelling just one admittedly isn't too bad. However, when 2 afflicted spawn, ideally the healer can dispel one and a DPS or tank can dispel the other. Doesn't seem so bad if your party's actually paying attention, but as a healer, if you're forced to deal with 2 afflicted solo, it's quite difficult depending on your spec. Having to heal an afflicted to full actually takes a few globals depending on your class. Resto Druid main here, hots are absolutely terrible for this affix, and can be downright impossible if they spawn at a time when your party is taking heavy damage. Not to mention the fact that sometimes you have to actually dispel something in the dungeon, putting your dispel on cooldown or leaving you with a tough or impossible decision on which to use. I know this is largely a healer audience, so raise your hand if you've been stuck dealing with all the afflicteds, even though you have several other party members capable of helping. Okay, hold on. 1, 2, everyone. Okay, got it. Everyone. The other thing that really grinds my gears about this affix is who gets off scot-free to actually doing anything as usual? Pure DPS, as always. Making this affix healable was honestly a huge mistake on Blizzard's part. This immediately skews it toward being the healer's problem. If it had a small health pool to the point where any direct heal would instantly take care of it, like a reversed explosive, it would be a little better. If it was something you could actually see in a group of mobs, especially in something like Vortex Pinnacle, well, it would be a little better too. If the penalty for missing one wasn't complete doomsday, it would also be better. But friends, I've come up with the ultimate fix for this affix. Delete it. It's absolutely terrible. It's Incorporeal's unwanted little brother. Literally bring back anything else, including explosive, if you're dead set on a fun ruining affix. Failed experiment. How did this actually go live like this? Okay, rant over. Let's talk healer meta. As expected, Resto Shaman remains in the S tier, which is the standard for Season 2, and the fact that Poison Cleansing Totem took care of 2 sets of Afflicted makes this week a walk in the park for the blue class. The A tier is where most of the specs are going to land, with Disc, Druid, Evoker, and Paladin all performing closely to one another. Having spent most of my time on Disc Priest and Resto Druid, I can speak most closely about these two. Disc feels strong this season, both from a healing throughput and damage perspective. Mass Dispel has a load of relevant uses in the dungeon pool, and Disc's main weakness, lack of CC and a kick, doesn't seem to be as big of a deal in this dungeon pool as it was in Season 1. Also, they've got a really sweet force set going for them, and it's nice to see Disc performing well in high keys early this season. I've been maining Resto Druid, and I have to admit I'm a little disappointed by its performance so far in Season 2. For one, I can't quite put my finger on it, but the damage just hasn't scaled from Season 1 the way that I thought it would, and I feel like my overall damage is a little bit low compared to what I expected going into Season 2. The force set, which looked like absolute god mode on paper, actually feels a bit underwhelming in practice. There's also some mechanics such as Gash Frenzy and Brackenhide Hollow, which feel really difficult to deal with as a druid unless you've got a group of people who are actively trying to help you out. Imagine that. In Season 1, it felt like every boss mechanic was tailor-made for druids, and I'm finding that to be less the case in Season 2, but still, druid is a solid pick, as always, and brings a good kit of utility and survivability to the table. Apart from that, it's nice to see that Evoker didn't take the drop off in Mythic Plus nearly as hard as most people, myself included, thought. Probably shouldn't be too surprised though. Kind of like Druid, Evoker has a kit full of utility that I think is just going to sort of make it forever at least pretty good. And all I'd say that the healing meta is in a pretty okay spot, knowing that Holy Priest is actually more on par with Mistweaver, but priests are all just playing disc and keys right now. We know Holy Paladin is up for a pretty sizable rework in 10.1.5, so I think things are in a pretty good spot right now. Here's the last 2 weeks of dungeon difficulty. Underrot, Freehold, and Brackenhide Hollows seem to come in as the easiest dungeons regardless of Tyrannical and Fortified. Halls of Infusion appears to be a lot easier on Tyrannical than Fortified, which I totally agree with. And Vortex Pinnacle, Neltharian's Lair, Uldaman, and Neltharis seem to be most difficult week over week. From a healer perspective, I definitely agree with what I'm seeing here on Subcreation. VP and Uldaman both have bosses that have potentially really nasty overlaps with single target and AoE healing abilities that can easily leave one player out to dry if you're not completely on top of your healing. In Neltharis, Magmatus can be a really hectic fight towards the end if positioning isn't spot on. Forge Master Goric will keep you pumping the entire fight, and even following nerfs, Neuraxis can be quite painful in Neltharian's Lair too, so all these final four will definitely keep your hands full as a healer. Back when Blizzard used to tell us what the affixes were going to be in the season, we'd talk about them in these videos, but now instead, I try to guess what they are and get the guesses horribly wrong. So here's my prediction this week based on what we have and haven't seen so far. We're going to have Tyrannical, Volcanic, Sanguine. And if that actually holds up, first of all, it would be the first time I've ever even come close to guessing right. And secondly, it would make for a really good push week, so let's hope I am right. The other level 14 affix we haven't seen yet is Bursting, which would also not be too bad, especially on a Tyrannical week. Not sure why Blizzard has decided to keep everything such a big secret this time around. So do you agree with me? Is Afflicted just a meme affix to get us all to play Diablo 4 on launch week? Let me know down in the comments below. How do you feel about the forming healer meta? What are your thoughts on the dungeon difficulty tier list? Do we have it right? Do you think that something's off? Always love to hear from you guys. If you made it this far in the video without falling asleep, I always appreciate a thumbs up. Subscribe to see more of my content in the future. Check out my stream right here on YouTube, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 9 p.m. Pacific, where we have lots of M+ healing fun. Until next time, guys, you are my favorite. Happy healing. I mean, sure, this is fun, but is it click on the ghost and dispel it before it ruins your day fun? Yeah, it probably is.